This place isn't for people like you. That's what my dad told me 10 days before Christmas, as though I was a stranger who didn't belong at my own family table. Why? My older brother was bringing his fiancée home, and apparently, my job detailing cars and getting polish on my hands wasn't classy enough for the occasion. She's from a wealthy family, Dad said, and Ethan wants it all perfect. You understand, right? I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't tell them I'd already bought Dad a vintage record for his collection or Mom a soft cashmere scarf, or that I'd swap shifts to be there on Christmas Eve. I just said, I understand. A week later, they showed up at my door, panicked after learning the truth about Ethan's fiancée. I'd just come home from a long day at the garage, hands smelling of leather cleaner. When I finally called Dad, I wanted to ask what time dinner started on Christmas Eve, if I should bring my usual cranberry loaf or maybe try Grandma's peppermint bark. But as soon as Dad answered, I knew something was wrong. Naomi, sweetheart, he said carefully. This year, things are complicated. I froze, still halfway out of my winter coat. What do you mean? I asked. Silence stretched before he spoke. Ethan's fiancée's coming home for the first time. She's from old money and he wants things to go smoothly. He paused. She's worried you might not fit in. He meant my cargo pants, messy bun, and hands that always smelled like car wax. I could have reminded him I'd once paid Ethan's car loan when he couldn't. Instead, I said, I understand, then hung up. I stood in my small hallway, listening to the quiet. The floor creaked beneath me. Cold air leaked through windows I hadn't sealed yet. Outside, snow drifted down over cars and sidewalks. I went into the kitchen, set the wrapped gifts on the table, and sat there quietly. The phone stayed silent. Christmas morning came with a hushed gray sky, snow piling on rooftops. Everything felt paused, like the city held its breath. But my apartment was quieter than ever. No holiday music playing. No smell of cinnamon rolls. No chatter about gifts or dinner plans. Just silence. I stayed in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling. Around 9, I finally got up, pulled on a hoodie, and made scrambled eggs and toast. The scarf I'd bought Mom was still in its white gift bag on the table. I didn't touch it. By noon, I packed my toolbox and drove across town to Mrs. Alvarez's house. She's a retired librarian I'd helped before with her old Ford. A few days back, she'd left me a voicemail about her garage door sticking again. She opened the door wrapped in a thick sweater, her eyes lighting up like I was the best thing to happen all day. You're working on Christmas? She asked softly. I shrugged. Better than doing nothing. She smiled. Coffee's on. Fixing her garage opener took less than an hour. I stayed longer, carried in firewood, changed her smoke detector batteries, and listened as she talked about her late husband burning the Christmas ham every year. Before I left, she handed me a slice of apple pie wrapped in foil, in case you forget how sweet home can taste. Driving home, I passed my parents' street, lights glowing in every window. I didn't stop. Back at my place, I sat by the stove staring at the pie. It wasn't from my childhood table, but it was warm, and for the first time, that felt like enough. My mom, Diane, was the type who folded towels into perfect thirds and served cocoa in matching Christmas mugs. Dad, Robert, worked for the local power company. Steady, quiet, proud. And Ethan, my older brother, was always the golden child. He was born with a perfect smile and a gift for charming people. Debate team captain, star in school plays, the guy everyone called most likely to succeed. He breezed through life like it was scripted. Me? I was the opposite. Loud when I should have been quiet, stubborn when I should have smiled. While Ethan went to the Christmas dance in a rented tux, I was under a Subaru, changing out a timing belt with a wrench in my teeth. He went to college for marketing, did a stint on Portland's morning news, then came home when that fizzled. Still, in my parents' eyes, he sparkled. When I said at 19 that I wanted to train as a mechanic, Mom looked like I'd said I was running off to join the circus. Naomi, you're too smart for that, she sighed. Why not something respectable? I remember that word, respectable. it came up a lot. When I landed my first job at the garage, Dad didn't say congratulations. He only asked, "Is that safe for a girl?" No one came to see the first shop I managed or asked how many certifications I earned. But they watched Ethan's old news clips and shared his photos with hearts in the family group chat. I never truly resented him. He just fit into the world they wanted. I didn't. Still, I tried. Every Christmas, I brought gifts. I fixed Dad's snowblower without being asked. When Ethan's car broke down last February, I paid the bill quietly. But the minute things felt uncomfortable, they pushed me out. No conversation, no defense. Just, "She's worried you won't fit in." It didn't break me, but it confirmed what I'd known for years. I was family by birth, not by belonging. So I stopped waiting for a seat at their table and built my own. People look at grease on my jacket and think that's all there is. But there's more under the hood than anyone knows. I think it started when I was 22. One snowy night at the garage, while replacing a radiator, the shop radio played a finance podcast talking about compound interest and index funds. I didn't understand a word. If you're curious what happened next and what secrets I discovered under the hood of my own life, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the rest of my story. But it stuck with me. A few days later, I wandered into the downtown library and picked up a book called Your Money or Your Life. I read it cover to cover in 2 days. And then I read 5 more. At 23, I opened my first brokerage account with $700, 0 cents. That winter, I skipped buying new boots and put another $300, 0 cents, into a Vanguard index fund. The next month, I bought 1 share of a logistics company whose trucks I'd worked on. It felt like claiming a piece of a world that used to ignore me. It became a habit. I started waking up at 5 a.m. to read finance blogs before my garage shift. I tracked dividends, reinvested every cent, and took weekend jobs, not for spending, but for investing. By 28, I bought a house. It was falling apart, peeling paint, old pipes, a dead furnace. But I fixed every inch myself. Every dollar saved on contractors went into my portfolio. I never talked about it, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew how people would react if they saw the numbers. They'd stop seeing Naomi the mechanic and only see Naomi's bank account. So I kept my net worth private. Not even my best friend Lexi knew the whole story. As of last month, my investments passed $1,300,000, 0 cents. I'm not flashy. I still buy my tools used and wear the same jacket I've had for 5 years. My car has over 210,000 miles. But what I've built, I built it quietly, brick by brick. Sometimes I wonder if I keep it secret out of pride or protection. Because if they didn't respect me as Naomi the mechanic, they don't deserve to know Naomi the investor. It was 5 days after Christmas. I was under a Ford truck in my garage when I heard a car pull up outside. Doors slammed. Wiping grease from my hands, I stepped into the cold and froze. Standing in my driveway were my parents and Ethan. "Olivia, your girlfriend? The one I wasn't allowed to meet because I was too blue collar?" "I didn't even know it was the same Olivia until yesterday," Ethan snapped. "She came over for dinner again. I mentioned my old Civic breaking down, and she laughed and said, 'You'd never last a shift working for your sister.'" My chest tightened. "She told us everything," he continued, arms folded. "How you gave her her first real shot in the shop, how you taught her from scratch, how you stopped your boss from firing her after she wrecked that axle. She said she wouldn't have a career without you." Mom looked pale. Dad rubbed the back of his neck. Then Ethan's voice trembled. "She also told us about your investments, how you taught her the difference between gambling on meme stocks and actually building wealth. How you showed her your spreadsheets, Naomi." He glared at me. "She said you've got over $1 million saved, and you never told us?" I let the silence hang in the cold air like exhaust smoke. "No," I said quietly. "I did." Mom stepped forward, voice soft. "We had no idea, honey." I stared at her, then at Ethan. Would it have mattered? Would I have been invited if Olivia hadn't said something? Neither answered. Dad cleared his throat. "It's not about the money, Naomi." I laughed, sharp and short. Isn't it? Ethan's eyes were bright, not with tears but humiliation. You made me look foolish in front of her. That's not on me, I said. You were ashamed of me before you even knew me. Mom looked down at the tin in her hands, then back up. We came to apologize and talk. She hesitated. Olivia's starting a business. Auto parts distribution. She thinks you two should connect. Maybe work together. And there it was. The shift. Not guilt, not love, opportunity. I stepped back into the garage. You came to apologize, I said. But you brought a pitch. Ethan's jaw tightened. It's called building something, Naomi. I know, I said. That's why I built mine without you. Then I turned, walked inside, and left them standing in the cold. I barely slept that night. Even after they left, tension clung to the air like burnt oil fumes. I sat at my kitchen table, the tin of cinnamon cookies untouched. Outside, frost spread across the windows. Around 10 a.m. the next morning, my phone buzzed. Ethan. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Hey, he said softly. Yesterday was a mess. I want to start over. I stayed silent. I talked to Olivia, he continued. She really thinks this business idea could work, with you involved. Because of my money, I said. Because of your experience, he corrected quickly. Then quieter. Okay. And the money helps too. But she respects you, Naomi. She sees what I didn't. A silence settled between us. I know we've never been close, he admitted. But maybe this is a chance to change that. To build something. As siblings? Something in me tightened. For years, I'd wished Ethan would see me. Not as the grease-stained oddball, but as someone with worth. Now he was offering me a place at the table I had been shut out of. But only now, after the truth came out. Ethan, I said slowly, do you even know what I do every day? He hesitated. You fix cars. I diagnose electrical failures in trucks that weigh 10 tons. I recalibrate diesel systems. I manage a crew of 7 and still get under rigs myself. I paused. I've built more than investments. I've built a life, a business, a home. I know, he whispered. That's why this matters. I stared at the snow outside. If I'd said yes before you knew about Olivia and the money, would I have been welcome at Christmas? No, he admitted. I was embarrassed. And now? He was silent. I drew a steady breath. I'm not buying my way into acceptance. If we rebuild anything, it won't start with a business deal. Naomi, he protested, don't throw this away over pride. This isn't pride, I said. This is boundaries. Then I ended the call. For a while I stood there in the quiet, listening to the hum of my old fridge and the click of the furnace turning on again. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. Just done. And somehow that felt like peace. 2 days after Ethan's call, Mom and Dad showed up again, no warning, just the crunch of tires on snow and a knock at my door. I opened it slowly, wiping grease from my hands on a rag. Mom was bundled in her red wool coat. Dad kept his hands shoved into his pockets, shifting like he didn't want to be there. Hi, sweetheart, Mom said gently. Can we come in? I let them in, not because I was ready, but because I finally wanted to finish this. We sat in my living room, same old couch, same crooked lamp. The scarf I'd bought Mom still sat untouched in its gift bag on the table. She noticed it, but said nothing. I want to start over, she said. We made a mistake, Naomi. Yeah, I said quietly. You did. Dad cleared his throat. We were wrong to shut you out. We didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to? I asked. You told me Christmas wasn't for people like me. You just didn't think I'd push back. They looked down. I'm not here to argue, I said, or to be convinced. Mom's voice trembled. We're not here for money. And why now? I asked. Why only after you learned what I've built? Dad tried to speak. And if Olivia hadn't said anything, I cut in. Would you be here? Silence. I leaned forward. I'm not ashamed of my work. I never have been. The only thing I regret is letting your silence make me feel small. Mom blinked back tears. We thought we were protecting Ethan's moment. We didn't mean to erase yours. But you did, I said. I've spent years giving, forgiving, and waiting to be enough. I looked at them both. This is where that ends. They froze. I'm not cutting you off, I added, but I'm done begging to belong. Dad sighed. So, what happens now? I stood, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. What happens now, I said, is that you decide if you can love me for who I am, not who you wished I'd be. But you'll do it from the other side of this door. Mom looked like she wanted to speak but couldn't. I let the silence stand. Finally, they stepped outside. I closed the door behind them, carefully, not out of anger, but out of clarity. It's been almost a year since that door shut. I've barely heard from my parents. A few holiday texts, a birthday card with just their names. Ethan called once, said Olivier had left the startup. He wasn't sure what came next. I wished him well, I meant it. But I didn't invite him back in. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just... And in the months that followed, something unexpected happened. New people started finding me. Not the ones who'd ignored me. People who saw me for who I really was. Young women from my old trade school reached out, asking how I'd built my investments. A community center invited me to teach a financial literacy class. I started saying yes, not because I needed praise, but because I finally had something worth sharing. Proof you don't have to look polished to be powerful, that you can build wealth with grit on your hands and a wrench in your pocket. One day after teaching, I found a note tucked under my windshield. Thanks for showing me that worth isn't something you prove, it's something you carry. I sat in my truck a long time, holding that note. Later, I stood in my backyard, watching the apple trees I'd planted begin to bud. I'd always wanted a yard like this. Not fancy, just mine. A place where things could grow honestly. Jada, my best friend since forever, pulled up in her rattling Jeep with coffee and donuts. You working again? She teased. Always, I said, brushing sawdust off my sleeves. We sat on the porch as the winter sun dipped low. Ever think about going back? She asked. No, I said, not unless they see me, not my money. She nodded. They probably won't. I know. I smiled. But I finally feel like I'm not trying to fix the wrong engine anymore. Jada laughed. That's the most mechanic way I've ever heard someone say they found peace. And she wasn't wrong. I wasn't fixing them anymore. I was building me. Not the version my family wanted, but the one who could sleep easy at night. As stars began to blink in the sky, I whispered words I'd never dared say before. I'm not a loser. And this time, I didn't need anyone to tell me otherwise. If you've ever felt unseen like I did, share your thoughts below. Tell me your story. Hit subscribe so we can keep building this community together. Remember, you don't have to fit someone else's mold to build a life you love. Your worth isn't proven, it's carried. Let's rise together.